Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday afternoon webinar on the top AI tools for DevOps and software development. We're going to kick things off in episode 1 with boosting productivity with GitHub Co-pilot and Azure AI. And today the presenters will be me, Marko, and Hannu with me. I will start by going a bit through the AI and the topic about AI and how organizations are changing. And then we'll jump right into GitHub Copilot features and how it changes kind of the developer flow. And then after me, Han will be talking more about Azure AI. Once again, welcome everybody. As we're speaking in Zoom, you will find a poll. It's 2 questions, so not very laborious. You'll go ahead, you walk to the poll, and you'll answer the 2 questions. And then in the end, we'll see some of the results. Let's go. So already in 60s, 70s, Roy Amara created Amara's law, which is essentially saying that we tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. And as we've now been in the generative AI era for a bit over 2 years, essentially like the democratization of generative AI, we've already seen that the tools have evolved hugely. And already like this week, we've had lots of new updates into some of the tools I'll be showing today and also some of the tools that Han will be showing. And we already know that the technology is running in front of us. But at the same time, how do we put them in place in organizations in an effective way? How do you change your organization in an effective way? And we see that there are 2 change movements happening in the organizations. The developer platforms and platform engineering is kind of continuing the DevOps movement in organizations, making the organizational transformation possible. Consolidating the tooling, consolidating the cognitive load within developers, and providing the tooling as a service for the developer organization. The organizational transformation. Whereas then at the same time, the whole AI-driven development moving is coming on an individual level into organizations. So I, as a developer, am getting the tools that I can use. So GitHub Copilot has been around for now 4.5 years, I think. And we are able to start changing our way of working. And of course, that will then integrate into the organizational transformation and build something bigger in the future. If we look at some of the statistics of AI co-piloting, we already know that most of the organizations and their developers have already started using AI-driven coding in one way or another in their work. Yet only less than half of the companies have actually implemented AI in their software development. And of course, this number is growing all the time. But it's still the reality that organizations that have the front-running point of view, they are the ones that are moving in the front. But then there are lots of organizations who don't either see digital services in their core strategy or aren't yet ready for this movement, aren't there yet. And this also reflects the fact that only 11% of organizations are actively using AI in their workflows, meaning that it's still very much a developer tool. AI co-piloting promises us big changes, like big boosts in our development flow. And this is, of course, from the GitHub research stating that AI co-piloting is making developers 55% faster. However, when we look at it from the organizational point of view, this is not always the truth. We know that if organizations, only small fraction of organizational R&D budget is spent on the actual development work, doing it 55% faster doesn't change the organization so much. On average, organizations tend to use 5 to 10% of their R&D in the actual development. So making that 55% faster would be 2.5 to 5% faster organization. So we're still far away from getting the actual benefits that are promised by these researchers. However, from our customer base, we've seen two things happening clearly. So the first one is from a Fortune 500 company CTO, stating that we've seen benefits of 3 to 4 hours per week. This is, by the way, one of the questions in poll. So if you're answering the poll and you're developing your organization, I would highly value your answer in this. This is the finding we've had, is that developers will be 10% faster in their daily work with the means of AI-driven development. And 10% increase is huge. Like, it's one of the biggest changes within development future that we've seen. So already it's not 55%, but the change is huge, and it's only going to accelerate in the future. The other interesting finding from a very regulated Fortune 500 company is that developers end up writing more compliant and consistent code with the means of AI-driven development. And this is kind of natural because AI is helping the developers from the knowledge base of code that's already seen as compliant and consistent. It's bringing the ideas that are already from its base compliant and consistent. And this only supports the learning curve for developers. And of course, when the suggestions are coming in, they have been more or less trained and pre-screened. This doesn't mean that you wouldn't have to yourself understand what's happening, but on the basic level, this is what actually happens. With these organizations in mind, and the changes that are happening within organizations, we see that developer efficiency is definitely a top-level priority, but the engineering organizations aren't yet able to have an effect. So we know that 45% of the CXOs of organizations are not measuring the productivity change within the organization. They're not measuring how the transformation is affecting the actual business outcomes. They might be looking at R&D hours or tickets or velocity, but the business outcomes are still yet to be defined, to be seen what is the effect in regular organizations. The second thing we always see, which is also one of the reasons for this webinar series, is that 1/3 of developers' time is still spent on maintenance and tooling. So tinkering with the tools that the developers should be using fluently in their organization. And even while we are talking about the AI-driven tooling, most of the vulnerabilities are still found in the very late of the software development lifecycle. Usually after the code has been merged, it's gone to either security team or some more extensive automation, finding these vulnerabilities and taking it all the way back into the development organization, to the beginning of the lifecycle. So before jumping into the Co-pilot and its features, I want to talk very briefly about the adoption curve within organizations. So at these 2 years, that kind of the underestimating the change that's happening in organization, we've been focusing on developer happiness. We've been served by GitHub Co-pilot as a developer tool, easy to implement, easy to start using. And within organizations, this is also important for you to focus on serving the innovators and early adopters in your organization to use these tools in an efficient way, being the innovators within your organization. But the real challenge comes then when you have to focus on the late majority, the laggards, the people who don't feel comfortable using these kinds of tools or don't naturally start using them in your organization. And there you have to start building kind of the automation, the platforms, the way how these people get automatically these kinds of tools in use and get the benefits with less and less effort done by themselves. So putting focus then on the productivity and control within the organization. As some of the statistics on organizations, most of the code naturally is still written without the help of AI tools. Most of the organizational teams still working on addressing technical debt. And 75% of the biggest organizations still use mainframes. So we already know that we're very much in the innovators and early adopters phase on all of this, but the change will happen super fast, which you will also see from my demo, how well the AI is already integrated into the development flow. A few months ago with my colleague Henko, we made kind of a prediction of how AI-driven development will look like in the future. And we had this slide as 2030 plus, as in defining target state and starting an AI engine working with the developer on stating what we need, the AI creating software, and then with the help of users and the data collected, AI will be proactively able to suggest changes in the actual application. And funny enough, just a few months ago, the Co-pilot workspace was released. I'll be showing it to you if it works. I think it works. As said, it's changing all the time, but it's the first concept of this kind of a development flow for the future, where I only make the requirements that are needed from the software, and then I start a discussion together with AI on where should I take the development of that actual feature. And it's not too far away from actually collecting the data and understanding the customers and users and bringing that insight into the automation loop. Now, before jumping in, I'll remind you all when listening to me that when you go back to your organizations, there are 3 key things that you have to keep in mind to make the change happen. So the first one is the benefits might lie somewhere unexpected. This means that when you start using these kinds of tools, you might end up seeing that, oh, this works actually much better in quality assurance, or our security is so much better when we start using these tools. So you have to be open-minded for innovation within the organization. You have to make this kind of a tooling easier to adopt than any of the alternatives. This also helps the organization to avoid shadow IT and centralize, consolidate the tool chains. And then being able to balance between the autonomy and standardization. So making the rule sets clear, but still leaving space for innovation. Let's jump right into it. So introducing AI-driven development. Today, I'll be talking about GitHub Co-pilot. And I think there are 4 key areas that you should keep in mind when working with AI-driven tooling on a developer team organizational level. The first one is generating code. So how do you generate code with the means of AI? And one of the ways, of course, is, for example, now the Co-pilot edits at the agent mode, which is able to generate all your bootstrap code, all of the boilerplate code already for you from the very beginning. So kind of that's the extreme of generating code. Understanding. AI helps you understand your code base, the libraries you're using, the interfaces, and the new code that you might have to read and understand. Automate. So as said, Co-pilot is not just for creating features, it's also for testing, security, building the automation pipeline, continuous integration, continuous delivery, and then also automating the infrastructure ultimately. And then 4th is learning. So from learning to new languages to mastering new skills like testing and security for yourself with the means of AI. Let's get into it. So I'll start with autocomplete, inline, and shell. For this purpose, and I'm doing this on a very simple application. I'm doing it on purpose. This all works on a more complicated projects as well, but it's easy for me to show. Here's a week.hopefully.works. It's an application that shows the week for today. And I have my terminal here, npm start. I've started my application. It's running on this smaller browser, so you'll see it. And then we'll go to editor, week number. We open the week number JS. So we haven't implemented anything. It shows a line for us. I'll create function get week number. Date is today's date. And then Co-pilot kicks in. So this is kind of essentially the simplest way to use GitHub Co-pilot. You start working on your current functionalities. AI picks the domain. It understands I want to do get week number. The code looks like JavaScript. It proposes it to me, and with tab, I'll just auto-complete. It proposes me export default, but since I'm using vanilla JavaScript, I need to use module exports, get week number, save. Looking at the browser, and there we have it, the week number 10. Amazing. So this is the easiest way of using GitHub Copilot. Now, let's go to / commands. So I have this existing code. I'll actually take another project so you see that can be used for a bit more complicated programs. / command here. I have initialize socket here. Keyboard shortcuts, I'm using OS X, but it's very similar also in VS Code in Windows. Command I. Directly in my editor, I have ask Copilot, and I'm using / command explain enter. What happens is GitHub Copilot kicks in, it reads the code, it explains to me what it does. And then if I add the context here, I will also be able to attach it to all of the other functionalities within the application. And by the way, you'll see here that there are the models that you can select to use. So it's not bound to only the GPT-4o, but you can also use a bunch of other different models for your AI engine as well. Now, let's go back to my week number. I want to write a test. It should return week end for 6th of March 2025. There we go. I've written a test. Let's go back to the terminal. Stop it for a sec and run the test cases. Oh, the tests pass. So I've been able to also write the testing with the help of AI here. And then I could select all of these and ask command ID, i.e. fix. I could say, please refactor this code and see if there are duplicate tests. Then it would start, it would run, it reads my code, it sees if there are any changes, and if there are, it will generate the edits for me. So already kind of walking towards the fact that I understand the coding, but it will also propose me changes. And now here it says, fix the code, remove any duplicate tests, refactor the selected tests. So I'll keep it as it is. This is just an example. And explaining I already showed. Then one super interesting extra feature, which I see in the kind of my normal development flow. So I can say GitHub Copilot suggests, how can I see the lines of code? I haven't tried this out, by the way. I'm just asking it, how can I see the lines of code? So it asks, what kind of command can I help you with? I'll say generic shell command. It says clock and the current folder. I can either copy the command to clipboard, explain the command what it does, or execute the command. Or if I'm not happy, I can revise it. I'll copy it to clipboard, and then if I paste it, I can run it like so. Of course, now it goes through also the node modules, so it's going to be a crazy number of lines of code for one single week number, but you'll see soon. There we go. So 1.75 million lines of code for 1 week number. That's dependencies for you. You can also make an alias. So how can I find all files with const in them? Exclude node modules. Oh. Let's try again. Exclude node modules. There we go. So I made a question mark alias, which already wants me to do command line request. So here you can see grep const exclude the node modules. No need to explain, I'll just execute it. And it would be executing the command for me. So these are kind of the immediate benefits you get from just the Copilot, a vanilla Copilot, so to speak, the one that I have integrated into my editor and the shell. Good, let's take a look at Copilot chats and edits. So you'll see I'm working on insiders, but these functionalities which I show you will be also working super well on the VS Code and of course number of other editors. We'll start with chats. So Command Control I, workspace. What does this code do? It takes a look at the workspace. It gives me an explanation of this application and it tells me what the code does. Okay, I was slightly confusing, so I was asking of the code here, present and not just the workspace. But you'll start the chat and you can have a conversation with AI essentially. So this is basically the first part. Discussion on topic. I could ask whatever. And as chat participants, I can ask, like I can add workspace, I can add project, I would be able to add more features on top of the chat. So essentially that's how it works. And then I would be able to have and I go to Copilot edits, which is kind of chat with an editor. I now have agent mode. It's actually comment dot, which I can say to change between edit and agent mode. So I'll be in edit mode. This is the one that you'll have in your VS Code as of today. I can say, please add a test for next week's Tuesday. It reads my file and it'll hopefully add me a test case for next week's Tuesday. Probably it'll write it as next week's Tuesday because I asked it to, but this is once again also for me learning to write it as I want. So you'll see, should return correct week for next week's Tuesday. There we go. Then I can either keep or undo it. Good. And then the last but not least, which I will show to you, is the agent mode. And the agent mode is one of the most exciting features that is around. It was released, I think, last week's Monday, and it's still very heavily in experimentation. I'll make a directory, Copilot agent. I just call it Copilot agent. Copilot agent. I'll open Visual Studio Code insiders. I'll open the edits, command dots. I'll change it to agent. I want to create a white React project in the current folder. So instead of just proposing me changes in the code, you'll see that it gives me a run command in terminal and command enter. It will run in terminal, create byte projects. It says I should also run npm install. So let's run npm install. This takes a while. So now it's installed the packages. Amazing. Then let me see, please start the project. Okay, npm run dev continue. It started the project. Let's open a browser. Oh, there it is, Byte plus React. So running not a single line of code written. So now remove the basic component and replace it with the week number. There we go. So now what it does, of course, it kicks in the Copilot edits. It removes the component. It generates the edits for me. Hopefully removes the kind of all of the basic bootstrap stuff it has there. Seems promising. Current week number. Applying edits. And as said, once again, I'm using week number because even while it looks slow, you will already see from the code that coding this by myself would have taken way more time or then just some time in Stack Overflow. There we go. Let's keep it. save it and go back to there it is, week number 9. And here, as you see, the week number is difficult to calculate. It's week number 9. So I've had lots of magic. There's still lots wrong with the actual algorithm, but we will not go there today. I'll just push on and we'll talk about Co-pilot workspace. So all of this has been in the editor. Now, presenting Co-pilot workspace, it's something that was introduced not too long ago. And how it works is I have this home weather monitoring system written in React and Bytes, as you already saw. So I can see it's 10 degrees here where I'm currently. And you'll see also some temperatures here. And then the code is in GitHub. I've created an issue, add battery display to temperature boxes. So I have the temperature boxes here and collecting the information from a Ruby tag through Bluetooth. And I'm not sure how long these tags will be running. So I would need to add a battery display to temperature boxes. This is my issue. And what Workspace does is it leaves the whole editor behind. So it will actually start a session with AI, which understands my code, and it goes to the project, says, no, the current code does not display battery information in temperature boxes. It gives a proposed solution. Temp box should sockets. Then I can give more instructions like sockets already sends the battery level in current dot battery, and the threshold for red should be 2800. Reads the files, understands what I said, adds it as an instruction. I'm happy with the instructions. Let's generate a plan. As I generate the plan, it will add me files that it is going to change. Components, temp box, sockets, landscape portrait, home page, tag page. Well, we'll just go ahead and see what it does. We'll implement selected files. And now it kind of starts the same session as I would have in the Copilot edits, but it's doing all on its own in kind of behind the website engine here. And I'll see it adds me battery to the React component, sets the battery here, and it even adds the battery center, and it says battery text. Obviously, this is not exactly what I would have wanted, but not spending too much time on starting the further discussion with AI. I'm waiting for this to finish, and then I'll make a pull request for us. No changes in homepage, nor tag page. Anyway, once we're done with the change, there is a button here called create pull request, and branch name add battery display, good enough. So creating pull request, attach share link. What happens next is, once again, we talk about the platform engineering as the organizational change agent. So now as I have the code in GitHub and I have the pull request here, I of course have created actions that start the automation for the quality assurance. But then at the same time, I have automatic deployment for all of the pull requests and branches to see how it looks. So now I'm using a service called Vercel, user at hopefully works. And I'm going here, and you can see that the battery has been implemented here. It's not quite the way I would have wanted, but you see that without writing one single line of code, I've added a full-blown feature to an existing complex project. And this is the power of Workspace, which you will be seeing in the future way more than we're using today. The last but not least, and actually the last part of my demo, is the Copilot autofix, which I also want to show to you. So I've created a repository called example autofix. It's based on CodeQL errors template, just to have it as a replicable project. You can just browse that if you want. In the security tab, In code scanning, I would have a problem called database query built from user-controlled sources. What this means is I've used a variable in an SQL, which means that anyone who knows I'm using this variable can be using SQL inject vulnerability. And of course, CodeQL, the GitHub advanced security features, picks this up. And instead of just ranting me about this problem, it uses Co-pilot auto fix, with which I can click and generate a fix. Exactly the same way as I used just the Co-pilot workspace, AI is generating a fix suggestion. And since it's very contained, so the CodeQL problems I can see here are super contained, and it means that creating the fix suggestion usually is very efficient. So as you can see here, I have 2 lines of code, and since it only requires me to remove the SQL injection, I can add it with a simple query, committing to a new branch, making a pull request already as part of my regular development flow, less work for the security team and less cognitive load for everybody. And these 4 key features build then the current GitHub Copilot's portfolio. There's so much more I could show, but since we have limited time for today, this would be an overview to you. And then we'll take it over to a short introduction of Azure AI. Over to you, Anno.
So now it's time to dive into different kinds of AI. While GitHub and Co-pilot does have a massive impact on how we develop, and nowadays, as Marcus showed, there are even more things that can speed up the development lifecycle. So I'm going to show you basically something about Azure AI services and the catalog, also talking about the data residency and Azure AI Foundry, which is quite recent announcement from Microsoft in November. So let's have a look. Well, I'm a more practical person. There's not going to be much of like slides. I think that was the only one that we have. AI has basically hidden quite nicely the machine learning part, which we have been hearing for the past years. So that haven't gone anywhere. It's more or less present pretty strongly with the AI. Now let's go with like the key services that Azure is providing. On top of we have the OpenAI, which is basically the large language models and other stuff. And for those, Microsoft is stating that they don't process any data in OpenAI APIs, ChatGPT, or otherwise they run everything by themselves and operate that by themselves. We have AI search, which is basically the search engine, which can be bound to the multiple data sources, including the SQL databases, Cosmos DB, and the blob storage. We are having the presentation today about it. Then we have Vision AI, which is the computer vision, face API, and custom vision for image and video presentations. And detecting images, context, and understanding what's happening in them. Then we have the speech service, which is basically like producing the speech of text, or from the text, text to speech, and etc. Although the translations, and I can recognize the speaker by the audio samples provided, basically just in advance. Then we have the language service, which is more or less like understanding the context of the text, or whatever context you are providing to it. It can detect the language and any different kind of things as well. Then we have translator for like a real-time translating. They understand over 100 languages and different kind of dialects. Document intelligence, that's basically like extracting information from the forms, PDFs, and different kind of files. So you can put in the invoices, receipts, whatsoever, and you can basically extract the information out of it in JSON or any other format that you want. Put in the database or used as AI services. Then we have the bot service, which is kind of like a traditional bot stuff you have seen in the websites. Kind of like you can build different kind of flows, how to find information, where you have it, or even like a book hotel room. So that's a low-code stuff by Microsoft, so you don't have to know much. to build the bot service. Then we have an anomaly detector. That's basically processing time series data. And that means that it can understand and try to find anomalies, peaks, dips, trend changes, basically you just name it, and just try to find anomalies that are out of the baseline. Content moderator, that's pretty much kind of like, it tries to detect different kind of like offensive or harsh languages or whatever you just don't want to have in it when it comes to the content itself. Health Insights, that's pretty unique. It's basically like processing the patient data in Azure for different kind of like decision making and just storing it in there with all the like regulations included. Personalizer is also a bit unique. It's basically like personalizing the UI layouts. It can provide you like a different kind of offers on the website based on your like different kind of information you provided. And you don't need to have machine learning expertise or anything else to use it. Metrics Advisor, in short, it's just like understanding the metrics almost real time that you are having. And of course, you use that for the like understanding whatever issues you are having. Immersive Reader is basically just, you can include and embed that in your application to help anyone, regardless of their age or reading capabilities, to understand and read the text. It basically reads aloud, translates, highlights, visualize different words of meanings, and etc. So it lowers the barrier to access some content if need to be. Multi-server accounts, that's shortly just access and billing related stuff. You have one account and then you can access all of these services in here at once. Content safety is, well, that's kind of like we are going to talk about that a bit later, but it's about different kind of filters when you feed stuff into AI or any systems, or when the AI, for example, generates the output, what you want to will filter out. So it wouldn't like talk inappropriately to your customers, or customers don't do the same for your employees. And then we have a few classic older models here or services, which can be basically done with the service above. But all of these are kind of building blocks. You can think about them like Lego blocks. You can use them as standalone. You can combine them as you wish, or you can use them together with different kind of other services. But everything, most of these services can be found also from Azure AI Foundry. Azure AI Foundry is like all in one tool for generative AI applications and deployments. So most of the things that you need to build, monitor, and track, audit, cost control, compliance, security, etc., is found in here. So first of all, AI usually like is built around the different models, language models or understanding images. It doesn't matter. So all is here. Microsoft's basically providing almost 2,000 different models nowadays. It's 1,865, which is quite a lot. It has been categorized by collections, different kind of things like OpenAI services, Microsoft, Meta, NVIDIA, you name it. Then we have an industry filter for different like specialized models, like healthcare. Every model has their own capabilities. And if you want to build AI agent, then there is a small subset of these models that can be used to chat with. Basically, even if there is like almost 1,900 models, only 8 of them are having agent supported. Okay, jumping a bit. You can use serverless API, which means basically go with the flow. You don't have to provision anything, or you can have managed compute and also benefit from the like reserve capacity and other things. Then we have more detailed like features of each of the like models, like text-to-speech translation, understanding image, and many other features. Let's not go too deep in there. And of course, we have the licenses. Every model has their own license and different kind of things, so keep those in mind. There's a way to compare models, but that will take too much time to generate, so we will jump that. But basically, when you choose to have one model, you have the like details in here. which are describing what the model does, when it has been released, different versions, and also likely you want to know which languages are supported, at least what is announced to be supported. Generative AI can perform well with other languages as well, but that's not maybe guaranteed. There's also benchmarks, which are just showing quickly. There is like a different comparison between AI quality compared to other models, estimated cost. I choose to have GPT-4o, which is likely one of the most expensive ones, but also, well, comprehensive ones. And opposite side, we have a small language model, which is PHI family, which was made by Microsoft. And as you see, the estimated cost is quite low. And at the same time, AI quality is not that low. So large language models versus small language models, we are likely going to see the small language models a lot more nowadays because they are sufficient for most of the tasks that you are doing, and they can be used also like on mobile devices and on edge and all other places with much less resources spent, which also means less money spent. Every place you can find the code samples, so you don't have to start from the scratch. This is basically Azure AI Foundry SDK stuff, more or less. So with one SDK, you can communicate with all these models, which makes the deployments and other stuff quite nice. Playground. Most of the things there is a playground, and you can test things out without actually deploying much of the things. You need to deploy the actual model maybe, but you don't have to deploy applications and those kind of things. We are today trying the agent playground, but otherwise, I think we skip the rest because otherwise we run out of time. AI services. Well, it's kind of like the same list that we were looking at before. So speech, text, language translator, vision, content safety, and etc. We might have a pick for the content safety of these later on. For the agents. So now we get more near the Co-pilot ChatGPT kind of experience. So to create a new agent, that takes like 1 minute. That's super fast, but obviously it doesn't do much more than provide you the language model at that point. You need to feed that with information of your own. But first you have the instructions that what you want the agent to be doing, what is behavior, how it reacts, how it responds, what are the boundaries. And you need to help that to understand that what the user expect to have when they prompt anything to it. Then you have the knowledge base. You can upload the local files. You can have the Azure AI search, which we are using now today. And our demonstration, the demo application, and the playground are using AI search with the blob storage, which is having the homebrew code project, which is having something like 200,000 lines of code. We have here heard some from our customers many times that our examples are too simple, so they are not matching the reality of their own. They are having like gigabytes or terabytes of data, or they are using their own code, and it's not that's as simple as the examples. So today we're trying a bit more broad approach. So not millions of lines of code, but 200,000, that should be sufficient. Third option is to bring the Bing search. So you actually have a bit more capabilities, but we don't use it today, and it's not supported by every model or the region, but can be used. In addition, you have the actions. So basically you can add some actions that the agent does. You can create like a hotel booking agent, which is actually booking the room for you by using the external resources based on the prompt that you are providing to it, and maybe confirming like twice that are you actually sure that you want to book this room. Then we have the model settings like temperature and topi and etc. But these are mainly affecting how random or creative the model is and how consistent you want those responses to be. But enough about those. Let's try the playground.
I have a question while we're waiting. So how about the data residency? So just a few words. We have 15 minutes left. So how about the data residency? So how do these models and the data have like, what's the residency models that you can set for your organization?
Quickly start from here. So basically you can decide where and how you deploy the model. By default, it's offering you the global standard, which is all over the world in all the regions that are supported by this feature. And then on the opposite side, you have data zone provision managed. which is obviously the most expensive one. And you have the capability to deploy it in any supported region if you have the code, of course, and etc. But basically, it's a provisioned instance for you alone. So in that case, you can say it will be in the North Europe. Then there's like a middle stuff. You can say that it's going to be in Europe. It's going to be in the United States. If you choose to have a EU, then it's going to be in any region which is supported within the EU borders. So there are plenty of different kind of like options where to deploy.
So depending on the organization's regulative standards and requirements, there is model and the kind of residency that you can select, which then limits you to that area. Make sure that you're legally okay. Thank you. Just move on.
Yeah. And on top of that, you can also deploy stuff into the like private networks, and so you can isolate it even further. This example is not doing that best practice, so we are just overly simplifying things. So I have like 2 examples to show about the agents. One is this playground, and the second one is the TypeScript application that I did develop in a couple of hours. I did basically use the example code from the Microsoft documentation, but plus I added this UI and also the threads. So the agent holds the thread as a context and the history for everything that you put into the actual discussion. So only thing that you need to keep on the application is the thread ID, and then you're good to go. So basically, we have experienced that the playground can be slow sometimes, mainly because it's using like shared resources, but my own application is using the APIs on the background. It's usually like working much more fluently, but this is definitely having likely some bugs in the UI. So let's ask something about it. So summarize command line commands that I can use. So because the context is already saying that we are having the brew CLI on brew application, it should be able to answer to me directly about the brew itself. Okay, some application in the text while streaming, that's a bug. Otherwise, the answer seems to be quite fluent. So first question usually takes a bit more time because it's initializing the thread, but the next one should be much more faster. Give me just a list of comments. Okay. No line breaks, but there we go. But the same stuff in here, we can ask about the same question, which is dull. So, well, give me a summary of a list of comments, subcommands I can use in this one. So you see it's starting the generating response. This is more, let's say, blunt. It's also reaching the Azure AI search, which is our database. And then it produces the content. A bit more nicely formatted. Yes, we're going to run out of time, but let's speed it up. But it's also like giving the references that where I did find the information. So when you are using your own knowledge base, it should also give you the reference. If I now say that give me only a list of these commands, it doesn't even go to the database because it has all the information about. Changing the model here is quite simple. Now we are using GPT-4o, but to use Mini, it's just click, 2 seconds, and done. So now we are ready to use different model. And the same goes if I'm using my chat. This application here, it now uses the Mini instead of the full-blown LLM. So changing stuff in here is just easy, fast. You can try them out in seconds. And also you can change all of these instructions on the fly. So then let's move on forward. Templates, this is the one that I did actually use. I did use this example here, just gave my own flavor. Then you have the fine tuning, which we are not going to dive in, but that's possible in here. You have a prompt flow, which is basically giving you ability to create a super complex, different kind of like parallel jobs, how to refine the user prompt, what to do with it, and then refine it again, and then just feed it to the model, and then format and reformat the output, or do whatever you want, call it external services. There's a tracing. Sadly, I don't have anything to show you, but this is basically application in size, which can already track your application. But then there's this AI and LLM kind of like flavor, which is providing visibility for the actual prompts and the outputs that the AI is producing and how well they match, what is the relevance, and etc. Then we have evaluation options, that how we can evaluate how your application and AI are actually succeeding. And you don't have to invent stuff by yourself, because there is, for example, like a fluency evaluator or content safety evaluator. So it can test that how well your application actually obeys the rules that you want to put in. And then we have, as last, like safety and security stuff. This is the like content filters and the block lists, which will give you the ability. Oh, this is the last one. You have a separate input and output filter. So let's say you have a chat and you have the input, which I have just put in. It can like filter out violence, hate, sexual health, self-harm, or like the jailbreak attacks when the user tries to escape your sandbox or the boundaries you have set. And same for the indirect ones. You can block them, or you can just annotate them or turn them off. For example, if you are creating a system where the report like incidents or like a harassment or whatever, then you likely don't want to exclude, filter these out, because otherwise user won't be able to create a report. Otherwise, in the normal chat, you might want to do it. Okay, that was a speed run. Mark.
Thank you so much, Han. Briefly talk you through the poll that we had. So thank you all for answering the poll. It was pretty much aligned to how we currently see ourselves in the customer space. So the people who answered the poll said that you're somewhat or very happy with the Copilot as of today, but you haven't still seen too much benefits from it in your daily work. So limited up to 4 hours per week. And that's interesting. And as said, with the help from the presentation today, the webinar you had, the different features that you can put in place in your Copilot Azure AI environments, I'm hoping you'll get something out of this that you can go back and try in your organization yourself or communicating to others. And maybe they will speed up your development flow. And also, remember to not focus only on your singular developers, but also try to expand the use of Copilot AI-driven development to your organization, the pipeline, and all of the departments. Thank you everybody for listening. And just to remind everybody, the next episode, how to benefit from AWS multi-agent AI demo and discussions, will be held in 3 weeks. March 27th, the same exact time. And have a great day, everybody.